Welcome, welcome, welcome. Of course, a Friday morning is not typical for this podcast, but NBA playoffs first round predictions on tap today. Starting here with the 1-8 matchup, and I want to preface by saying that the play-in games here on Friday night haven't taken place yet. All right, so that's the Pelicans and Kings, that's the Bulls and Heat. I don't think that's going to change my predictions too much here for the first round, and of course, we'll talk about that here as we go on. But the Thunder coming to this game 57-25, a top five offense and defense, something you don't normally see. But they come in as one of the youngest one seeds in NBA history. I don't want to misspeak and say they're the youngest of all time, but they're pretty close to it. Regardless, they're led by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, as you all know, a top three MVP candidate, a guy that gets you 31 a night. Regardless, I think this is definitely the less favorable matchup for them here if they were to face the New Orleans Pelicans, a team that was around that 4 to 5 seed range throughout the entire regular season. And just some injuries happened to Brandon Ingram, and they lost a couple games, didn't go their way. They slipped into the play-in, and now the Pelicans, as of tonight, are fighting for their playoff lives. But if they do make the playoffs, this is a scary Pelicans team you don't want to face in round one because they have the defense, they have the shooting, and they have the star power. However, I think the Thunder, just with the pace of play that they have, and they are so disrespected at the moment, just simply for the fact that they are a young team. But again, it doesn't matter if you're a young team, if you're good at basketball. If you're a good team, then you're a good team. I think, no doubt, it's definitely the less favorable matchup of the two. You take a look at the lineups here. Of course, if you see the red, best player in the series, and when you have the best player in the series, gives you a pretty good chance to win, right? But facing a team like the Pelicans, I think it's going to be a dogfight, and it's going to be a 6 to 7 game series. And the Thunder are going to come out of this more banged up than they want to be, going on to face a team like the Clippers or, of course, the Dallas Mavericks. But I'm going to say it's a 7 game series, and I'll take the Thunder in this matchup. This one's a little bit more simple. The Thunder, Kings, as much as I love Sabonis, as much as I come onto this podcast and give him his flowers because Domantas Sabonis doesn't get him from the general media. I just think that, again, the Malik Monk not being there, he might be back for this series, but if he's not there, you don't have him, you don't have Kevin Huerter. Are you really going to rely on Keon Ellis to knock down 3 threes in a game to get you over the top in an entire series over the Oklahoma City Thunder? Again, I'm not sure that's possible. I do worry the Thunder struggle with rebounding. Sabonis is one of the best rebounders in the NBA, a top five at his position. And so I can see this series being a sneaky upset, just like the Pelicans. It just goes to show how much talent is in this Western Conference. It's one of the most loaded Western Conferences we've seen in a long time. But the Thunder, I'm still going to give the edge to them in this series. I know De'Aaron Fox is going to get you 25 a night. Domantas Sabonis is going to get you his 20 and 50 or 20 and 10 rather. It's just outside of that, you're going to have Keegan Murray to consistently give you, 12 to 15 points a night. Keon Ellis or Harrison Barnes are going to have to pitch in on a nightly basis. It's just going to be extremely tough for De'Aaron Fox to get this team over the top with all the defensive attention he's going to have. And then, of course, they're probably going to double Sabonis this entire series. I just think with the pace of play that the Thunder have, the Kings would have to play perfect with their brand of basketball. So I'm going to go with the Thunder again in this first round matchup, but probably in 5 or 6 games. For the Clippers and the Dallas Mavericks, these two teams met back in the bubble, and then the year after, I think it was a 7 game series and a 6 game series where they split those series. Regardless, this is probably the most anticipated first round matchup out of any first round matchup, if we're being completely honest. But again, Clippers, they're the 4 seed. They have home court advantage, and this team is revamped. They look a little different since the last time these teams met because they have James Harden and a healthy Kawhi Leonard. For the Mavericks, you have Kyrie Irving. So a little different ruffle here in both of these teams' look going into the series. The Mavericks also have some much needed size that they've added at the deadline with PJ Washington and with Daniel Gafford. And now Derek Lively, who's going to be an all NBA rookie this season. Look, all season long, I've come onto this podcast and I've said the two biggest threats to the Denver Nuggets this year are going to be the LA Clippers and the Dallas Mavericks in the Western Conference. And it's so incredibly tough. I think whoever makes, I mean, I don't want to spoil it, but today is not a full playoff predictions. It's just the first round. Whoever wins this series is going to meet the Denver Nuggets in the Western Conference Finals, and that's going to be the series that's going to feed families for generations, as we say now in the media. But I do like the Dallas Mavericks in this series. They've been my dark horse championship team all season, and they're going to continue to be here as I think they're going to get the edge over the Clippers because now there's questions about Kawhi's health. And I'll say this. If Kawhi is fully healthy, which he won't be, but if he's fully healthy from game 1 to game 7 or however long the series may be, I'm going to take the Clippers because the Clippers, when you have this much depth and this much talent around Kawhi Leonard, it's tough to beat a team like that in a 7-game series, especially when you have maybe the best coach in the league on your sideline in Tyronn Lue. It's incredibly tough to beat the Clippers. But it comes down to what version of James Harden are you going to get? What version of Russell Westbrook are you going to get? Are you going to get those guys to consistently give you quality minutes? I mean, you still have Norman Powell off the bench as well. This team is so solid from top to bottom, but I'm going to go with the Dallas Mavericks. I'm going to take them in probably 7 games or so. I didn't have it on the screen, but I'll probably take the Mavericks in 7 games, maybe 6 games, right? A tough 6 games. I just think Luka and Kyrie are too much for any team to guard, no matter who you got on your team. And I'm going to stick with my dark horse Cinderella team all year in the Dallas Mavericks. I'm going to have them winning this series, going on to take on the Oklahoma City Thunder. And that's going to be probably an easier series than this Clippers series, just with how well these teams know each other. For the Denver Nuggets and Lakers series, man, look, I'm a Cavs fan, right? I grew up watching LeBron James dominate. I'm 21 years old. For my entire life, LeBron James has been in the league and he's dominated year after year after year. Whether he's winning the championship or not, he's arguably been the best player for 15 or so of those years. It's incredible, and it's been a privilege to watch maybe the greatest player to ever do it. But when you talk good about somebody, there's always a but. And here's that but. They play the Denver Nuggets, right? You play the Denver Nuggets with the best player in basketball and the best constructed roster around a star in the game of basketball at the moment in the Denver Nuggets. Of course, Jamal Murray, he's only getting better with time. Of course, he had some injuries this season, and Reggie Jackson was starting for a good stretch of the second half of the year. But Jamal Murray is getting more comfortable, and he should be ready to return to playoff form. Michael Porter's playing his best career basketball. Aaron Gordon is definitely, his impact is always there on the court. Not so much in the stat sheets, but his impact is just so much greater. And, of course, he's always taking a step up in the playoffs. Now, I do worry about this Denver Nuggets team when it comes to depth. They're losing veteran guys like Bruce Brown and Jeff Green. Well, Christian Braun's playing really good basketball this year. Peyton Watson's playing really good basketball this year. But as far as the Lakers, when you really dive into this series, it's really I think this is actually the best time to grab the Denver Nuggets in the first round. Maybe they don't take you as serious in the first round because you didn't knock off a couple opponents. This is the best time probably to grab the Denver Nuggets, right? If you're the Lakers, you have the roster to compete with anybody. You have the roster to match up with anybody, but you're facing the best player in basketball. I think, personally, if you're the Lakers, again, it's really, this is the best case scenario for you and the worst case scenario for you. Simply for the fact that if you beat the Denver Nuggets, that is a confidence boost like no other. You knock off the reigning champions, a team that nobody wants to face in the playoffs, period, let alone in the first round. You knock them off, it's only going to get easier, hypothetically, from then on out. But the downside, you might get swept because they've won the eight straight games against you, 9 of the last 10, and it's incredibly hard to beat a team like the Denver Nuggets in a 7-game series when they control the ball and they control the game as much as they do, especially, again, with Nikola Jokic. It doesn't matter if you play perfect defense for 23.9 seconds. Jokic might throw up a shot behind his head, and it might touch nothing but net. And, of course, we experienced that a lot last year in the postseason. This Nuggets team just looks like the odds-on favorite to win the title, in my opinion. However, if there was a team to do it in the Western Conference, the Lakers might be the team to knock them off in round 1. For the Timberwolves and the Suns, I hate this matchup for the simple fact that I've loved to watch this Timberwolves team all season, and they just so happen to run into the one team that they cannot defend, and that is the Phoenix Suns. I think the Suns are going to take this series in 7, but let me explain here. Phoenix, of course, they're 3-0 against the number 1 defense in basketball this year, which the Timberwolves currently have. I think the X factor for this entire series is Karl-Anthony Towns. Of course, when you look at the tail of the tape, when you look at these lineups next to each other, Conley and Beal will most likely guard each other. Anthony Edwards and Devin Booker are going to guard each other. Jaden Daniels and Kevin Durant, they're going to guard each other. For Karl-Anthony Towns, are you going to expect him to guard Grayson Allen, for a 7-game series? Again, Grayson Allen is definitely the least amount of a threat in this starting lineup for the Suns. but that's a lot of open three-pointers. And if Karl Anthony Towns isn't giving full effort and contesting every shot, and it's going to be very tough for this Timberwolves team to guard the Phoenix Suns with the spacing that they have around their star players. Now, Gobert and Nurkic, of course, it's just going to be a brawl between those two. But Chris Finch and, of course, Frank Vogel, I think sets up a very interesting coaching matchup in this series. And I think that goes underrated as far as how that's going to impact the series. But I think Chris Finch has done an amazing job with this team all season. He's got them to, of course, they could have been easily the number one seed, but of course, some things didn't go their way end of the season. Definitely the X factor is Karl Anthony Towns. If he comes out and he's defending his butt off and he's giving you 20 a night, spacing the floor for Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert, it's going to be hard to beat this Timberwolves team, period, in a 7-game series. But again, he's coming off an injury. He's just getting his feet under him. I don't know if Karl Anthony Towns is going to be able to step out and guard Grayson Allen. I think it definitely sets up an interesting dynamic between these teams. However, I'm going to go, like I mentioned, with the Suns in 7. It's just one of those teams. It's hard to bet against Kevin Durant. It's hard to bet against Devin Booker, arguably 2 top 10, top 12 players in the world. And then you still got Bradley Beal and Nurkic and Grayson Allen having a career year, rounding out the starting lineup. Then you got solid bench pieces as well. It's tough to imagine this Suns team losing in the first round to pretty much anybody aside from the Denver Nuggets. So I'm going to go with the Suns here in 7, and that's going to set up an interesting second round matchup, which we'll talk about now. So my bracket is the Thunder and the Mavericks in the second round of the top half of the bracket. On the bottom, we have the Nuggets and the Phoenix Suns, a rematch of the second round series of last year's Western Conference playoffs. But you see, Phoenix actually has a winning record against Denver this year. So maybe Phoenix can finally figure it out and slay the beast that is the Denver Nuggets. I think up top is an interesting matchup. Luka and Kyrie have all of this playoff experience, and you're facing a team that's young, hungry, and has pretty much no playoff experience. So a very interesting matchup there. But I think if I had to make an early prediction, my Western Conference Finals is going to be the Denver Nuggets and the Dallas Mavericks. But that's what mine has been all season if you followed the channel. For the top half of the Eastern Conference bracket, of course, I don't think it's going to matter here anyway. And that's simply for the fact that Jimmy Butler is hurt. Now, I can see the Celtics sweeping the Miami Heat here in this matchup. Of course, they have a top 3 offense and defensive rating, something we haven't seen of all time. They have the 3rd best net rating in NBA history. This Boston Celtics team is, I guess, statistically, a top 3 team of all time as far as net rating. And that is just hard to fathom. But this team is so well constructed. Can they put it together playoff time, though? That is the biggest question for the Boston Celtics. But I think with Jimmy Butler going down to injury, maybe the Heat sneak in a game because Erik Spoelstra is just that great of a head coach. But I just can't see this Heat team getting more than a game in this series. Maybe Tyler Hero has a splash game, or maybe Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown just don't come to play for a certain game or two. Maybe the Heat can make it interesting. But without Jimmy Butler, I can't see the Celtics losing this series at all. So I'm going to take the Celtics here in a tough 4-game series. Again, it could go either way, though. Same thing here with the Chicago Bulls. Again, you're facing a team that, cool. They're beating up on playing teams. Kobe White just had his first career 40-point game, which doesn't count, by the way, because it was in the play-in. But shout out to Kobe White. He's playing his best career basketball. Should be the most improved player, but Tyrese Maxey is going to win that award. Ayo Dosunmu now slides into the starting lineup with no Alex Caruso. Of course, this Bulls team already doesn't have Lonzo. They don't have Zach LaVine. If they did, this sets up an interesting first-round matchup. But they're missing a lot of guys, and it puts a lot on DeMar DeRozan's shoulders, on Vucevic's shoulders, on Kobe White's shoulders to step up and play at the level of the Boston Celtics. The Celtics just have too much defense, and it's incredibly hard to think that you can save Jrue Holiday. Well, I'll say this. You put Jrue Holiday on DeMar DeRozan, right? And, then you have Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Derek White to defend the top 3 guys on the Chicago Bulls. It's a bad matchup for the Chicago Bulls. The Celtics match up with anybody, and they have the star power to put them over the top. Incredibly good or hard matchup for the Bulls, but I'm going to go with the Boston Celtics in this one. Yet again, probably 4-0, more confidently in that one than the Miami Heat just because of Erik Spoelstra. Then we talk about the 4-5 matchup, the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Orlando Magic. And I'm going to game 1 of this series tomorrow. Of course, I'm a Cavs fan, so shout out to them. But that's not going to change my, I guess, series prediction, right? I'm always an unbiased podcast here. But the Cavaliers, I think they're going to get a 4-1 series. I think they're going to win the series 4-1 in a very tough 4-1 series. The Orlando Magic come in with the best theme song, but also one of the best young groups in basketball, right? P5 is a first-time All-Star this season, so shout out to him, right? I'm excited to see what he can do tomorrow night in his playoff debut. We saw guys like Julius Randle and Mitchell Robinson dominate us last year in the first-round series, and Paolo Banchero is much more talented than those guys, so he could probably come out and have the same impact. And if he can, if it's just a repeat of last year where the Knicks got after the Cavs, they defended us really well and they rebounded, then the Magic are really good at that stuff. If they can do that, the Magic might come out and win this first round series. However, I think the Cavaliers with Donovan Mitchell, with Darius Garland, with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, this core of guys that we have, we are playing for our future. And what I mean by that is if we go out this year and we have another disappointing first round series, we're not only are we selling Donovan Mitchell, he's out the door. Jared Allen might be out the door, and who knows? The futures of Darius Garland and some other pieces might be out the door as well. We're definitely getting a new head coach. We're gonna look like a completely different team if we can't get over the hump this year. So, as a biased Cavs fan, even though I try to stay unbiased, I am so hoping that we can win this series and win it in 5 to 6 games. I'd rather not go to 7. If we go to 7, it's the Magic. And I'll be honest with you. But I will say, for the Orlando Magic side of things, you come into this series with nothing to lose. If you get swept in this series, or if you win this series, the fans aren't going to look at you any different because you didn't have any expectations coming into the season. Some people saw you just as a play-in team, and you're a top 5 seed in the Eastern Conference. There's no pressure here for the Thunder or for the Magic, and that's a great place to be if you're a Magic fan because your team's going to come into this feeling loose. They're going to be ready, and they're going to shock the world. Honestly, if I wasn't a Cavs fan, if I was looking at this as a Pacers fan, I'm probably taking the Magic in this series for the simple fact that they can defend and they can play the Cavs just like the Knicks did last season. They have great defense, a top 5 defense, right? They can defend this Cavs team just like the Knicks did, and then they're great at rebounding and they're just great at being physical. And the Cavs, again, the lights were too bright, in the words of Jared Allen last year. The Magic can be physical. They can play the same brand of defense, and as long as they can knock down a couple threes a night, the Magic might walk away with this series win and go off to face the Boston Celtics. But as a Cavs fan, I'm going to go 4-1. I'm going to say it's a very competitive 4-1 series, and the Cavaliers get over the top. At least that's what I'm hoping here, right? But you look at the lineups here, of course, the Cavs and the Magic, I would say they split. I'm not a big fan of JB Bickerstaff, and I think Jamal Mosley is one hell of a coach, and I think for that simple reason, they can get over the top in this matchup. But again, as a Cavs fan, I'm going to root for my team first round. Give me a break here, right? For the Knicks and the Sixers, I'll go the Knicks in 6 for the simple fact that, yes, Joel Embiid is great. Yes, Tyrese Maxey's having a career season, all NBA level, argue, for the both of them. I just think that this Knicks team is built for the playoffs. And again, they like to slow it down. They like to slow the game down, play at their own pace. And of course, this team, I don't know if there's a team with better chemistry outside of the Nuggets than the New York Knicks, right? This team is just Brunson's going to come into this series. He's going to give you 30 a night, right? Is a good way to put it. So I'm interested to see how the Sixers address guarding a guy like Jalen Brunson. They don't really have that lockdown defender. Do you really think Kyle Lowry at 37 years old can defend Jalen Brunson? Maybe 10 years ago he could have. Not right now. And Jalen Brunson's going to have his way in this series. So I'm interested to see how they guard him. Do they double team him? Do they just force everybody around them to beat the Sixers? I think that's probably going to be the strategy. Force Dante DiVincenzo, Josh Hart, OG Anunoby. Force those guys to go out there and give the Knicks a spark. Give them a 25 to 30 point night to get the Knicks over the top. If you can shut down Jalen Brunson or minimize Jalen Brunson, it's going to be very tough for the Knicks to get over in this series. However, I do still like the Knicks in this series because Joel Embiid is coming off an injury. Again, 50% of Joel Embiid, which is what we're getting right now, is still giving you 29 and 10. But I think the Knicks have the rotation of bigs to give Joel Embiid fits. They have the defense, of course, to get after him, to trap him, double team him. And then it really comes down to who can win you the series, Jalen Brunson or Tyrese Maxey. And as much as Tyrese Maxey has been a great player this season, As much as this Sixers team is going to maybe shock the world and go really far into the playoffs, I just think the Knicks have everything to guard this team to perfection. And I'm gonna relive if Kyle Lowry. I'm gonna live with the fact that Tobias Harris, Kelly Oubre, or Kyle Lowry are gonna win this series for the Sixers if I'm the New York Knicks. So if I'm the Knicks, again, you have the defense to guard Joel Embiid. Again, he's not at 100%, and I think for that sole reason that Joel Embiid is not at 100%, I'm going to take the Knicks in 6. I'm going to take them in 6. Maybe the Sixers come out and they win the first game or two, and then the Knicks, realize what they have to do and take care of business like they did last year in that first round against the Cavaliers. But for the Sixers, I do want to throw this out there before I move on. This is going to be the best playoff series of Joel Embiid's career. He's going to give probably a 30-point triple-double a night or pretty close to it, and it's just not going to be enough for them to get over the top. But interesting playoff matchup here. I can definitely see, again, just like the Magic, I can very easily see the Sixers winning this series and creating some chaos there in the Eastern Conference. And then for the last one, I imagine, or the second to last playoff matchup here, the Milwaukee Bucks and the Indiana Pacers. I'm going to have the Bucks in 7. And again, this morning, Giannis was ruled out for the series. So why am I taking a team that's not favored? Well, I didn't want to take the favorites for every series, right? There's always at least some upsets. But I look at this matchup and I say the Pacers, they're young, they're fun, and they should win this series with Giannis now being out for the entirety of it. I think Giannis could potentially come back for game 6 or 7. But I'm going to take the Milwaukee Bucks in 7 for the simple fact that I've seen Chris Middleton step up in the playoffs numerous amounts of times. I've seen Damian Lillard do that, right? I've seen Damian Lillard carry a team to the Western Conference Finals before, but I've also seen Damian Lillard have his fair share of first-round exits. Regardless, this Bucks team with Damian Lillard, they have the defense around them. They have the camaraderie. And I just think that this team is in a position, even though they have Doc Rivers, and I'm not a Doc Rivers fan, I think this team is out to prove something. And, they've heard the rumors, they've heard the murmurs that this team is not going to get out the first round without Giannis Antetokounmpo, and they very well might not. But I believe in this Bucks team. And again, this is a series where on paper, you're like, look, Giannis is out. The Pacers have Tyrese Halliburton, Pascal, a very well-rounded unit around them with Rick Carlisle, a playoff-proven head coach. There's no reason that the Pacers shouldn't win this series. But that's the exact reason I'm going with the Milwaukee Bucks. So we're going to go with the Celtics and the Cavs in the first round. We're going to go with the Knicks and the Pacers in the second round, even though the Bucks are there. But man, if Giannis can come back, if I knew for sure that Giannis was going to be healthy and ready for round 2, I would much rather see Giannis take on the Knicks than, of course, the Indiana Pacers. But again, when I circle back to the series, the Pacers with this high-powered offense that they have, it could just as easily as it could win them the series, it could easily lose them the series and get them swept, right? I think I'll say this, I don't think there's a team with a wider range as far as a series-to-series basis than the Indiana Pacers because, again, with their offense, they can beat everybody if everything's clicking, but they can also get swept because of a cold streak that they could go through with how they rely on the 3 as much as they do. But Friday podcast in the books. First one, I think, ever on this podcast. We've done fantasy football episodes, but not necessarily podcast, right? Regardless, episode 163 in the books. Let me know what you guys think down below. Who are you taking in the first round? But again, first round matchups, or first round winners, I have the Thunder, the Dallas Mavericks, the Nuggets, and the Phoenix Suns there in the Western Conference. In the East, of course, you guys just saw it. So very interesting. I'm very excited for the playoffs. It's kind of bittersweet, no doubt about it, because I'm excited to see the best basketball of the year. I'm excited to see who can win the Larry O'Brien. But at the same time, basketball, it feels like this season has flew by, and I don't want the season to end. Regardless, if you did enjoy, drop a like, subscribe to the channel. I know we were kind of everywhere on this podcast, but it was a last-minute call, and we really turned on the cameras and went. But I'll see you guys on Tuesday. Until then, stay happy, stay healthy. We're out of here.